Ottawa has unveiled plans to support both the steel and lumber sectors today. Both have been hard hit, of course, by Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs. Let's bring in Catherine Cobden, President and CEO of the Canadian Steel Producers Association. Catherine, good to speak with you again. Lower limits on steel imports from other countries. How useful is this to the Canadian steel industry?
Extremely. We are really grateful that the federal government has responded to our call to tighten the trade measures and to expand them to include downstream steel-containing products. So really, there's a sense overall of relief in the sector that this will buy us some time and some space in the domestic market for us to withstand and endure what we've been going through.
Okay, give me an idea, please, for our viewers, how much steel gets imported into our country and from where, and what that looks like with this new measure.
Yeah, so this measure, this measure takes aim at both free trade partner steel levels at a reasonable at 75% of 2024 levels, and it also caps imports before tariffs at 20% for non-free trade agreement countries. So for us, there's a significant number of countries in each of those categories that ship steel into our country. That's about the total imports is about 8 million tons. 3 million tons of that is from the CUSMA region, and the remainder is from these other either trading partners or non-trading partners that are basically covered by this system.
Okay, just to make it a little bit more complicated for everybody to understand,
it's complicated.
And you touched on this. It doesn't affect the U.S. and Mexico under CUSMA. We have a 25% tariff on steel imports, I believe, from the U.S., but there's a 50% markup on Canadian steel that goes to the U.S. Are you unhappy about that? Would you have liked to see the rate for imports from the U.S. go up?
Yeah, I think we do have some more work to do with the government on remissions. But, one thing we did see today was the announcement of more enforcement and more sort of power at the border, if you will, to catch unfair traders. And we really applaud that move. We need to enforce these trade measures. We need to make sure there's no workarounds. We also need to make sure that we don't, give a lot of remissions to these important trade measures. And so one of the things we heard today was the Prime Minister say that remissions that were sort of a blanket, they called it a horizontal remission system, those things that let U.S. steel come in tariff-free into our country, that day is over on January 31st, 2026. They will no longer be able to do that. And I am, for one, very happy about that because, of course, our steel has been tariffed into the United States since March.
The new tariff you mentioned on products like, as you mentioned, downstream, so wind towers, fasteners, 40% of which comes from the U.S. You said you'd like this. This is something you would ask for. Is this enough?
Yeah, so it's a really new measure. So I think the overarching message is that we are grateful for the step, and we need to see how it does because we've never done this before as a country, nor has anyone else, except for the United States, who just recently did it on us. So this is, I think, a good response. It's global. It's not targeting the U.S. specifically. It's targeting all downstream steel derivatives. And then ultimately, because it aligns with the United States in many ways, I'm hoping down the road that they see that as a strong sort of show of faith, if you will, that we are prepared to do what we need to do to protect the market.
Let me ask you about rail rates, because something included in the announcement today was the fact that the government will work on securing essentially either subsidized rates or lower rates for shipping steel across the country. Was this a problem before?
Well, transportation is always a significant cost. So anything that the government can do to make us more competitive is helpful. This one was a bit of a surprise for us. We are grateful for it, but we need to understand the details of how it works. But I think at the highest level, it's safe to say that it should improve our competitiveness. So we welcome it.
Okay. And of course, there will be a push to buy Canadian steel for those who choose to build in this country, and of course, for major government projects, of which we are expecting many when you look at the budget. Has any of that started to work in favor of the steel sector yet?
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to get stories from the members of new requests related to Buy Canadian policy. So that's very encouraging. I do caution, though, that is more of a medium term thing than the immediacy of the border measures. So we understand these new border measures will be in place on December 26th, right after, on Boxing Day, I guess. And they have a pretty immediate impact. So this is both for the tariff rate quota that you described, as well as the steel containing goods system, that tariffing system that we've discussed. So that's pretty quick for the government to move, but it is the one that's most impactful in the short term.
Can you also just give us an update on how the industry is doing, how it's managing the tariffs? Have been upped, and they're hefty tariffs, and it's really been a target for Washington. How would you describe or characterize the state of the industry at this point?
Yeah, I think that there was a significant amount of desperation and deep, deep concern and anxiety in the industry. We have lost thousands of jobs. We have lost customers. We continue to lose customers. Let's hope today's measures that go into effect at the end of December turn this around. But we're quite hopeful that it will, because we asked the government to be very mindful of a number of aspects of these border measures. And, they've answered that call in a very significant way. So we're really hoping that that's going to turn this around. But I cannot say it enough how desperate the times have been for the Canadian steel sector. We've been enduring these tariffs for over 9 months, and that's very, very hard to sustain.
Catherine Cobden, I'm going to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us on The Close today. Catherine's President and CEO of the Canadian Steel Producers Association.